I want to tell you about a letter I received last October. It came from a woman named Eleanor in a small town outside Charleston, South Carolina. Her son had died 3 months earlier. He was 22. She wrote that on the morning of his memorial service, before anyone had arrived, she went out alone to her garden. A monarch, and she noted that monarchs were not common in her area in that particular week of the year, landed on the wooden bench where her son used to sit when he came home from college on weekends. It opened and closed its wings 4 times, and then it lifted off and flew over the back fence. She did not write to ask me what it meant. She wrote because she wanted to tell someone who would not look away. If you have lost someone, there is a good chance you already know what Eleanor was describing. Maybe it was a butterfly that came at the funeral, or on the first morning of the first summer they were gone, or on a difficult anniversary you had been dreading for weeks. The kind of moment that you have probably never quite known what to do with, because the people you have tried to tell it to either smiled in a way that meant they did not really believe you, or got very quiet and said, "I know exactly what you mean." This video is going to talk about what we actually know and what we genuinely do not about moments like this. Welcome back to Backyard Wild Mind. If you are new here, subscribe before you go, because what we cover today is something almost no one talks about clearly, and I have wanted to talk about it carefully for a long time. Today, we are going to walk through 7 specific butterfly behaviors that have been associated across cultures and across centuries with moments of grief and the sense of a loved one being close. For each one, I am going to tell you exactly what the science can document, and there is real science here, much more than people realize. And I am going to tell you, just as honestly, where the science stops, and where the question becomes one only you can answer for yourself. I am not going to tell you what to believe. I am not qualified to do that. And, frankly, I think anyone who claims to be is overstating their authority. What I can do is give you the most honest account I know how to give of what is actually happening in those moments, and let you decide what to do with it. Stay until the end, because the 7th behavior is the one I think about the longest, and the one I have been asked about more than any other. The first behavior is the most common one in the letters I receive. A butterfly lands on a person, or on an object meaningful to that person. A bench, a windowsill, a porch rail, and it stays. Not for the half-second insects normally rest, for seconds, sometimes for minutes, long enough that the person notices and stops moving and begins to wonder. What does the science actually say about this? Dr. Adriana Briscoe, a vision researcher at the University of California, Irvine, has spent much of her career on butterfly perception. Her lab's work has shown that butterflies possess some of the most sophisticated visual systems in the animal kingdom, including ultraviolet sensitivity that lets them assess living creatures, including humans, with a kind of precision we have only recently begun to understand. When a butterfly lands on a person and stays, several measurable things are happening. It is reading the chemistry of the skin through receptors on its feet. It is using the warmth of the body, typically around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, for thermal regulation, since butterflies cannot generate their own heat. It is, in many cases, drinking the trace minerals in human sweat. And it is assessing, continuously, whether the person it has landed on is a threat. What science can tell you is this: butterflies do not stay on creatures they perceive as dangerous. They do not stay on creatures that are moving abruptly. They stay on creatures who are still, calm, and emitting the chemistry of relaxation rather than stress. What this means, in practical terms, is that a butterfly that stayed on you or on someone you love chose to. It assessed the situation, found you safe, and decided to remain. What science cannot tell you is why it chose that specific moment. Why on that bench, on that morning, in that hour. Whether the timing of its arrival was coincidence, or whether something we do not yet have instruments to measure was also part of the equation. The honest answer is that nobody knows. The science is, on the question of timing and meaning, silent. What I can tell you, and what I want you to hear clearly, is that you did not imagine it staying. The stillness was real. The duration was real. The choice the butterfly made was real. And what you do with that information is yours to decide. The second behavior, the one I see in letter after letter, is butterflies that appear specifically during moments of solitary stillness. You are sitting alone on the porch in the early morning. You are at the cemetery for the first time in months. You are standing in a doorway you have been avoiding. You are not doing anything that should attract attention. And a butterfly comes. Research on butterfly behavior published in the journal Animal Behavior and in studies conducted by the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation has documented that butterflies are significantly more likely to approach humans who exhibit slow, stable body movements and low amplitude breathing. The same researchers have shown that humans in states of high emotional arousal, anxiety, agitation, grief, often display physical stillness that is qualitatively different from ordinary resting stillness. It is deeper. The breathing is slower. The body holds itself in a particular way. To a butterfly making a flight assessment, this kind of stillness reads as exceptionally safe. Safer than ordinary calm. Safer than a person reading on a porch on a normal afternoon. The chemistry of grief, paradoxically, may make the human body more attractive to a passing butterfly than the chemistry of regular daily life. So when a butterfly appears in a moment of profound stillness, a moment of mourning, of solitude, of remembrance, the science can document why. The butterfly is responding accurately to what your body is doing. What the science cannot answer is the question that probably matters more to you. Why, of all the gardens in your neighborhood, did the butterfly choose yours on that morning, at that hour, on that specific bench? I cannot tell you. No one can. What I can tell you is that the chemistry of your body in grief is genuinely different from the chemistry of your body on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. And butterflies, in some measurable sense, can tell. Whether something else is also at work, something not measurable, not yet understood, is a question I do not believe science has finished asking. This one is in the letter Eleanor sent me. The monarch opened and closed its wings 4 times before it left. And once you start paying attention, you will see this in letter after letter. The butterfly lands, it rests, and then, instead of taking off, it begins to slowly open and close its wings. Not the rapid defensive flutter butterflies use when they are about to escape, but a slow, deliberate, almost rhythmic movement. While it does this, it appears to be looking at the person watching it. Here is the part most people do not realize. The slow opening and closing of butterfly wings has a documented biological function, and it has almost nothing to do with the person watching. It is called basking or thermoregulation. Butterflies are ectothermic. They cannot generate their own body heat. Their flight muscles need to be at roughly 85 degrees Fahrenheit to function. When they land, especially in cool conditions or after a long flight, they use the slow opening of their wings to capture solar radiation directly onto the dark veining of the wings, which transfers heat into the body. The slow rhythm you're watching is not communication. It is, in the strictest scientific sense, the butterfly warming itself. But here is what is interesting, and this is where the science gets honest about its own limits. When a butterfly is basking, its eyes remain extremely active. Butterfly eyes are compound eyes with thousands of individual lenses, and they process visual information at roughly 5 times the speed of the human eye. While its wings are slowly opening, it is, in genuine terms, watching you, with more visual acuity than most people realize. So when a person describes a butterfly that opened and closed its wings while looking at them, that description is, biologically, accurate. The butterfly is doing both things at once. It is warming itself, and it is observing. And the slow, almost meditative quality of the moment that you remember, that you could not stop thinking about afterward, is the result of a butterfly behavior that happens to look, to human eyes, exactly like attention. Whether it is also something else, whether the timing of when this happens carries meaning beyond chemistry and thermal regulation, is again a question I cannot answer. I can only tell you what is happening in the visible behavior. The rest belongs to you. The 4th behavior is one of the strangest patterns I have seen in the letters this channel receives. People describe a butterfly appearing in their yard, often during or shortly after a significant loss that is not common to their region. A monarch in a place monarchs do not usually visit. A swallowtail far outside its range. A species the person has lived with for 40 years and never seen before in their own garden. What the science can tell you is that butterflies are, in fact, far more mobile than most people realize. The painted lady, Vanessa cardui, is one of the most widely distributed butterflies in the world. Research published in the journal Ecography, drawing on data from European and North American tracking projects, has documented painted ladies completing migration routes of over 9,000 miles across multiple generations. A single painted lady may travel thousands of miles in its short adult life. They turn up in places no one expects them, reliably, year after year. The Xerces Society and Journey North, the Citizen Science Migration Tracking Project, Both maintain records showing that out-of-range butterfly sightings are far more common than the casual gardener realizes. What feels rare to you, a butterfly in your yard you have never seen before, is, statistically, entirely possible. It happens to gardens across America every year. But here is what the science does not address, and what I want to be honest with you about. The science can tell you that an out-of-range butterfly sighting is possible. The science cannot tell you why it happened in your yard on that particular day at the moment when you most needed something to happen. The science can document the phenomenon. It cannot account for the timing. I have read hundreds of letters describing exactly this experience. A butterfly the person had never seen in their yard that appeared during the week of a death or an anniversary or a particularly hard morning, and then was never seen again. I cannot tell you, and no honest scientist can tell you, whether the timing was coincidence or something else. What I can tell you is that the butterfly was real. The fact that it was out of range was real. Your noticing it on that specific day was real. The framework you use to hold that experience is yours. The fifth behavior is one of the most documented in butterfly research and one of the most emotionally loaded in the letters I receive. A butterfly, sometimes one with a distinctive marking, a torn wing, a faded patch of color, returns to the same spot in the same yard. The chair on the porch where your husband used to read, the garden bed your mother planted before she got sick, the bench by the back door. It comes back, day after day, sometimes for weeks. I am going to say something most spiritual content avoids saying, and most science content also avoids saying. I believe the truth lives in the space between these two views, and the people who refuse to acknowledge that space are not helping anyone. Here is what the science says clearly. Butterflies are capable of associative learning. Dr. Martha Weiss at Georgetown University has published landmark research demonstrating that butterflies can remember the location and characteristics of a rewarding flower or feeding site and return to it deliberately. A butterfly that has found nectar, shelter, or warmth at a specific location will, in many cases, come back repeatedly for the rest of its short life. So when a butterfly returns to your husband's chair day after day, the science can explain it. The chair is warm in the afternoon sun. The patio is sheltered. There may be flowers nearby. The butterfly has learned that this is a good place. It is doing exactly what its biology says it should do. But here is where I will be honest with you. I have heard from too many people describing this pattern in too much detail, in too many gardens, around too many specific losses, to feel comfortable telling you it is only chemistry. I do not have evidence that it is anything more than chemistry, but I also do not have evidence that it is only chemistry. The truthful answer is that we do not fully know. What I will tell you is this. If a butterfly is returning to a place that matters to you, notice it. Whether you call it grace, or memory, or coincidence, or simply the way the world chooses sometimes to be gentle, the noticing is what matters. The framework is yours. The sixth behavior is timing. A butterfly appears at the moment of a thought. You are sitting on the porch thinking about your father and a butterfly lands on the railing. You are at the cemetery, and one passes across the headstone. You wake up on the morning of an anniversary you have been dreading. You walk to the kitchen window, and there is a butterfly on the screen. A reader named Margaret from a small town in eastern Tennessee wrote to me last spring. Her mother had died in March. On the morning of what would have been her mother's 78th birthday in early May, Margaret woke up and walked out to the kitchen to make coffee. A small white butterfly, a cabbage white, the most common butterfly in the eastern United States, was on the inside of the kitchen window. It had somehow gotten in overnight. It was completely calm. Margaret cupped her hands around it, carried it to the back door, and opened her hands outside. The butterfly sat in her palm for almost a full minute before lifting off and flying over the fence. Margaret wrote, "I am not asking you what it was. I just wanted to tell someone. Here is what the science says about timing. Coincidences happen at a rate human beings consistently underestimate. The human brain is built to find patterns in noise, and our memory disproportionately preserves coincidences that feel meaningful while discarding the thousands of moments that did not. This is well documented in cognitive psychology research. What this means is that a butterfly appearing in a moment that feels important may, in many cases, be a butterfly that would have been there anyway. The meaningful timing exists partly because of how human memory selects what to remember. That is the honest scientific framing. I will not pretend it is not. But here is the other side, and I want to give you both. The fact that human beings find patterns in noise does not by itself prove that no patterns are present. Some patterns are real, some are coincidence. And distinguishing between them in any individual case is something I cannot do for you from a distance. I do not believe anyone can. What I will tell you is that Margaret did not need me to tell her what the butterfly was. She needed someone to acknowledge that the moment was real. That is what I want to acknowledge for you now. If you have had a moment like hers, the moment was real. Whatever else it was, the moment was real. I saved this last one for the end because it is not, in the strictest sense, a behavior at all. It is what happens inside you when you see one of the behaviors we have just talked about. If you have lost someone, a parent, a spouse, a child, a friend who knew you in a way no one has known you since, there is a chance one of these moments has already happened to you. A butterfly came. The timing felt impossible. You stood there, or sat there, and something in you went quiet in a way it had not been quiet in a very long time. You did not have words for it then. You may not have words for it now. I want to talk about what to do with that feeling, because almost no one is going to talk about it honestly with you. Across human cultures, going back thousands of years, butterflies have been associated with the souls of the dead. The Greek word for butterfly, psyche, is the same word the Greeks used for soul. The Aztec and later Mexica peoples believed that the monarchs that arrived in central Mexico each November were the returning spirits of warriors and ancestors, and the timing of that migration aligns almost exactly with the days now called Dia de los Muertos. The Cherokee, the Blackfoot, the Irish, the Japanese. Peoples on different continents who never spoke to each other, all arrived independently at variations of the same association. Butterfly equals soul. Butterfly equals returning. Butterfly equals the one who has gone, briefly, coming close. What I want to say carefully is this. The fact that many human cultures arrived at the same association does not, by itself, make the association literally true. People are imaginative. People grieve. People reach for what is beautiful. And butterflies, with their transformation through the chrysalis, their fragility, their seasonal disappearance and return, are an obvious metaphor for the human experience of loss and continuation. At the same time, the fact that the association is found across so many independent cultures does not make it worthless either. Human beings have noticed something across cultures, across centuries, that they keep wanting to put into words. That noticing is data of a kind. What kind of data, exactly, is something philosophy and theology have spent thousands of years trying to work out. I am not going to settle it in a YouTube video. What I will tell you is what I told Eleanor when she wrote to me about the monarch on her son's bench. I told her that I could not tell her what the butterfly was. I am not qualified. No one is. The scientific framework says one thing. The spiritual frameworks of dozens of human cultures say something else. The honest position, in the space between, is to acknowledge that there are questions science has not finished asking, and that the experience of grief is one of the hardest places humans go. But I told her this, and I want to tell you the same thing. You did not imagine it. The butterfly was real. The timing was real. The way it sat on the bench, at that hour, on that morning, was real. Your noticing it was real. You were not making something out of nothing. You were noticing something that happened in the actual world on that actual morning. Whatever framework you choose to understand what happened, whether you call it grace, or coincidence, or memory, or the soul of someone you loved coming close enough to let you know, that framework is yours. It is not for me to tell you which one to use. It is not for the scientific community to tell you. It is not, with all respect to the spiritual traditions of the world, for them to tell you either. You get to decide what you do with the moment. And whatever you decide, it is not foolish. It is not delusional. It is not weak. It is one of the things human beings have done with moments like this for as long as there have been human beings to grieve. And it is allowed. What I would say, gently, is that if a butterfly came to you in a moment of grief, you do not have to choose between honoring the science and honoring the feeling. You can hold both. Most of the people I admire who have lived through deep loss have eventually arrived at exactly that. A quiet acceptance that the question of what was happening in that moment may never be fully answered, and that the answer matters less than the noticing itself. The butterfly came. You noticed. Something in you on that day was met by something in the world. Whatever else was happening, that is not nothing. That is one of the small, ordinary, world-old experiences that this life still makes room for. If you are grieving right now, please be gentle with yourself. Watching this video may have brought up things you were not ready for. If the grief feels heavier than you can hold alone, there are people trained to sit with this kind of weight. Grief counselors, therapists, support groups, and a hotline I will leave in the description below. You do not have to carry this by yourself. Reaching for help is one of the kindest things you can do for yourself. And if a butterfly comes while you are watching, notice it. That is the whole instruction. Just notice it. Before I let you go, I want to say something honestly. Backyard Wild Mind is a small channel. It is one person sitting at a desk, reading the research, reading the letters viewers send in, and trying to put what I find into words that feel true to the way we actually live with the wild lives in our yards, and sometimes with the people we have lost. If this video reached you, the most helpful thing you can do is hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell. Not for me, for the next person watching alone. 6 months after a loss, searching for words about a butterfly they cannot stop thinking about. The algorithm only shows them this video if enough of you tell it that the work matters. If you can leave a comment, even one sentence, that is what keeps small channels like this one alive. Before you go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to know that I read every comment that comes in. Has a butterfly ever come to you in a moment of grief, or remembrance, or on a day that mattered? What kind of butterfly was it? Where were you? What were you thinking about? Did you tell anyone afterward? And if you did, how did they respond? I read every story, and I carry them with me. The ones from people who lost a parent, the ones from people who lost a child, the ones from people who simply had a hard week and a butterfly came at exactly the right moment and they still think about it years later. Tell me yours. And if this video reached someone you love, share it with them or share it for them. Sometimes the right words at the right moment are exactly the thing. Thank you for being here at Backyard Wild Mind. This is a channel about the small wild lives that share our backyards with us. The birds, the butterflies, the things we hear at night, the creatures that have decided, for reasons of their own, to live close to us. If that is the kind of channel you want to spend time with, I would love to have you stay. I will see you in the next one.